Welcome to a Day in the Life video series from your therapy source with your host, Margaret Rice.
All right, welcome back to our video series, A Day in the Life, where we're going to be interviewing teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, parents, anybody who works with children. And today we have Kristin. Welcome. Why don't we start out? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a first grade teacher. I'm going into my third year of teaching. I switched careers later in life. So teaching was something I always wanted to do, but I stayed home and worked part-time at a different job while I went to school to get my master's. Going into my first year of teaching was actually in 2020, which was very interesting to say the least. So last year was a lot easier in a lot of ways.
Right.
But hopefully this coming year will be a little more smoother.
Now, were you in person? Was it hybrid last year, or were you in person the whole year?
We were in person the entire time.
Oh, okay.
However, every time a kid would go into quarantine, I was doing concurrent teaching last year where they would like basically log in and see us teaching in a classroom setting. But the year before we were doing one-on-one teaching. So all my plan times and after school, I would be having to spend an hour a day with those students who were quarantined. And that was very difficult.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That must have been very time consuming.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was really difficult.
And what
Especially
state are you in?
Year. Missouri.
Missouri. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So things are getting a little bit back to, well, what maybe would be your new normal, because you don't really know compared to before. So that's good.
Yeah.
And how many students do you have in your classroom?
It varies. We have anywhere from 18 to 22.
Okay.
Fairly low though.
And are you a regular education teacher or special education teacher?
Regular classroom teacher.
Regular classroom teacher. Okay. Mm-hmm. And do you have students with special needs in your classroom sometimes?
All the time.
All the time. Okay. So an inclusion model or co-teaching. Okay. Do you have a co-teacher with you or?
No.
Okay.
We have kids. Last year I had a student who had a paraprofessional with her all the time. She had a visual impairment. So she had a paraprofessional with her. Many times they're pulled out for special services outside the classroom. But I work very closely with special services. So they're working on the same things a lot of the time. They're just working on it in a different setting so that they can have their accommodations. A lot of them need a quieter space as well. So we kind of co-teach in that way.
Okay. And so you work on your own though to support their IEP goals, and then the teacher would pull them out of the classroom. Or that's
they work on their IEP goals, the special services teachers, but we try to integrate their IEP goals with the curriculum and the content that we're doing in the classroom.
Okay, that was kind of my question. You answered it. Got it. You phrased it better than I phrased it. So you're integrating all of that together in your curriculum to make sure that the students are reaching those goals.
Right.
And how does that work in the dynamic of your classroom? Is it hard when they're transitioning in and out, or it flows?
I mean, well, first grade is kind of an anomaly in that we have so many students being pulled throughout the day because we have reading recovery. We have Title I reading. So kids are being pulled throughout the day. And my kids who go to special services, I have a timer on my watch. Some teachers have like Alexa who will say their name, like, and they just get up and go. I don't have an Alexa. So I just use my watch and I'll just remind them to head on down and they know how to do it. So it's not disruptive at all in terms of the transitioning. It doesn't, they're very used to it.
Okay. That sounds hard to me. So I'm impressed. That would be hard for me. So I'm impressed by that skill set. And what would you say is the best thing about your job?
The best thing is, well, there's two great things. One, relationships with the students. as probably the thing that keeps me teaching, honestly. The second thing is especially, I mean, I'm in first grade, so I'm pretty passionate about reading. So seeing kids take off in their reading is pretty exciting. They come in, knowing basic letters. Some of them know some words. They know some words, but just seeing them putting it all together is really exciting. And it takes all year. Usually happens in the fourth quarter. So when that starts to happen, it's like, it just feels like, okay, this is what we've been working towards. So, but yeah, I really enjoy my students. Their first grade's a delightful age in terms of they just are very sweet. Most of the time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think it's a delightful age where they enjoy their teachers, but I will say, I think first grade is one of the most challenging academic years in elementary school, where they're required so much reading. Yeah. For those foundational reading skills.
Yeah. Well, that, and they're learning to be humans in a social setting. And they're at the same time managing all these things that they have to learn. And that's why I spend a lot of time, especially at the beginning of the year, building relationships with my kiddos. So, because it is such a hard year, that if you don't spend that time, it gets to be unmanageable for a lot of kids. So, yeah.
And what would you say is your biggest struggle?
Demands on my time that have nothing to do with what my classroom responsibilities is probably the most difficult part. There's a lot of things that we're expected to do that take away from planning, that I needed time in my classroom to get things done so that I can teach. So that's really tricky. We're also expected to implement a lot of interventions on top of teaching. For example, we have a student who has needs additional support with PT with handwriting. I'm supposed to, on top of everything else, find time to make sure that they are practicing certain exercises, practicing certain handwriting sheets, and make sure I'm documenting that I'm doing that. And that's just a lot of kids like that. So it's just really hard to make sure I'm doing all those things on top of the first grade content.
Right.
And, that we're supposed to do. So it is a juggling act.
For sure. That can be very difficult when it all gets piled on you, for lack of a better word, really, if you're the lead teacher. Yeah. Is there solutions that you think that, because I think there's a lot of teachers that struggle with that, for sure. I don't think that's isolated to, I'm sure, your district. There's a lot of teachers who are juggling all of those additional job duties that they have. Are there solutions that you've thought of or tried out, creative ideas that might eliminate some of those problems?
Well, this last year really focused on a couple things. Boundaries for my personal time. I just kind of had to make some decisions on, what was the most important thing. Because I can't spend every waking moment at school. I have to have, my family needs me. I need my time for myself. So having pretty firm boundaries in terms of when will I work on school things has really helped, because honestly, if you are completely burned out, it doesn't really matter what you're doing in the classroom, because you will be your attitude will be so negative that the kids feel it when you're burnout. So you just don't have anything left. So I put some pretty good boundaries, and that made a huge difference in terms of how I reacted to situations in the classroom. And it also affected how I view those additional responsibilities. I kind of filter them through, and luckily the district I work for, they're pretty, they give a lot of, in some ways, some autonomy in terms of what we do in the classroom. So just filtering that through, does this make sense for what I need to do today? Routines are really key for me. I spent a lot of time in the first few, well, really, let's be honest, it's like a month or so, just establishing routines where kids can then be working independently at certain times of the day. That way I can find time for those interventions. Because if they have for example, we have reading rounds in the morning. And so once we establish those routines, and, anytime we start to sort of stray from what's expected, we come back to what do we need to do. I try not to let it get too crazy, because there's just no way I can get all those things done if the kids don't know what they should be doing. So we really, and even when we come back from Christmas break, we spend another week, kind of, hey,
refocusing.
We were gone. Yeah. This is what school looks like. And the kids really gain a lot of independence that way. And they really like that. I think they seem to really like that, having the independence to choose and know what they're supposed to be doing and to do it. So
it makes effective learners when they can do that on their own, for sure. It's excellent habits to start at such a young age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we've definitely scaffolded it, especially in the first semester, because they're not really yet ready for a lot of choice. But then second semester, we start rolling out more choice. Once they know how it works, they can then, make choices, and they really it's kind of fun to see the difference between beginning of the year and the end of the year. First graders are like two different people. So that's really
it does
helpful.
sound like you do have a lot of solutions. You said you're setting boundaries, you're prioritizing, correct what you need to do to see what's the most important task that you need to take care of at first. You've established routines in your classroom. So that sounds like that's been very beneficial. So those are three really great strategies to kind of take care of that overwhelm that teachers might be feeling when you have so much piled on you.
Yeah.
Excellent suggestions. And where was I going to go with that? Now I've lost my question. What's one thing that you wish was different about your job? It's kind of a little bit of a different question, but if you could wave your magic wand and eliminate one main problem, what would that be?
I really wish that we had more time to let our kids play. More recess time, more time just to be kids. It's so tight. The schedule is so tight. And I just hate that we don't have more time. If I could wave my magic wand, then I would create a lot more free play. I think it's really important. And I build that in the morning. I don't have morning work. I refuse to do morning work. They have centers they can, or
excellent.
They pick up different blocks or whatever, or they can always color or draw. And a lot of them they're just prolific in the art production. By the end of the year, I hang up anything that the kids give me. I just have a wall, and it's
That's great.
covered. You can't even see the wall. It's crazy. And then we do have fun Fridays on Friday, the last 30 minutes. I have some special stuff that's just for Fridays that they play with. But if I could choose, I would have multiple recesses throughout the day. So that's not really up to me, but
right. And that too, I 100% agree. We really need to get back to those times when kids had more free play, where they learn how to interact with each other. They learn how to share, especially post-COVID, when these kids have been home in isolation for a long time, and you're getting them so young, and they're still really, recovering from that. And if more free play time, also it just improves their love of the school if they know that
Right.
it's not so academically based at such a young age. It's a real problem. Like you said, it's not in your control. I think it needs a reframing for parents and all administration of what our goal is for young learners, and maybe not have the bar just be what reading level they're at, although that's extremely important and we all know that, but it's also important to be able to interact with others and learn those skills. But it sounds like you're creating the best balance that you can in your classroom under the confines of that, and by allowing that free play time in the morning and on Fridays. That's an excellent idea. Like you said, there's plenty of time for other morning work periods where they can, do their writing and reading. If you had one success story that you would want to share about a student, what would that be?
Well, I have a couple, but they're different types of success stories. One of my students last year, she came in, she had been homeschooled. Well, she had done online kindergarten. Her parents both work full time. So they didn't really have the time to spend with her on school that they needed to. So she was very far behind. Like, she couldn't write a sentence at all. Like, we do a kind of a dyslexia screener at the beginning of the year, and it was like something about the red ball. Most kids could, know the letters enough, and they can stretch the words out enough to get most of it. And she had 3 letters written down. And socially, she was very shy, incredibly shy. Throughout the year, she did get extra help through reading recovery. Her parents really, and they were very very involved. Like, they all said, we really regret not spending more time. They just didn't
It's
know.
hard. Yeah, people at the time, you have to work. You have to put food on the
They
table.
work
So it's
full-time,
just the
and
situation that parents were put in. Very difficult.
Yeah. So all that to say is they were very supportive, and it was not, this is not disparaging on them. It was just a difficult situation.
Right.
But anyway, by the end of the year, she was reading on grade level, and she stood in front of the school board. She wrote a book called Lainey Learns to Read, and she read it in front of the school board. I mean, this kid was so shy at the beginning of the year. I mean, I was just like, who is this kid? It was pretty amazing. Just to see her growth throughout the year, just really just shows what happens when kids are in person and their family's on board, and she was fairly socially, she didn't have a lot of deficits other than she was just really shy because she'd never been in a classroom. She didn't know how to do anything, like line up. She was very confused by everything. So it was pretty awesome to watch.
Yeah,
actually.
that sounds amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing success story. And it sounds like everybody was collaboratively working to help her achieve her goals. And then it sounds like you met lofty goals and then some. So that's excellent. If you had any suggestions or things that related service providers could do to make your job easier in the classroom in terms of occupational therapy, physical therapist, speech, is there any suggestions you have there, how they can better support you in the general education environment?
Well, sometimes if I reach out to, for example, if I reach out to our OT PT person and ask them for, say, I'm noticing this thing in a student, I get so much information back that I don't know where to start. So simplifying things to the point where they're easy to implement, in the context of there are a ton of other things going on. And then I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out which one of these things I'm supposed to do, or am I supposed to do all of them, or the parent, you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes they know so much that they don't know how to
where to start. No, I completely know what you're saying. I completely get, because I think we are guilty of that a lot, where we provide too much information And maybe you're saying, if we break it down and just, okay, step one, try this strategy this week, just this strategy, and let me know how it goes, and come back and maybe offer another one. Is that what you're saying, to
Yeah.
simplify?
Very like simplify it and make it turnkey, so that I'm not having to laminate, I'm not having to print off. I just make it super easy and simple, because otherwise it sometimes doesn't get done. Honestly.
Right.
Like I just
Understandably so. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's helpful. That's helpful advice that, we all can benefit from, of having ready to go, resources for you. And because you're juggling, 20 kids at a time, whereas sometimes related service providers, we don't have that all at one time. So, they might have a big caseload, but they don't have them all at one time. So that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I can't really think of, I guess one thing I would recommend, that's worked for me, is having, and I know a lot of teachers in my school have this, they have a safe space, calm down corner. That has been so huge for my classroom, having a place, and I teach them how to use it. That's not a place to go to take a nap or, just hang out in when you don't want to do what we're doing. I actually have a hamper because I have small humans and they love to get into like little spaces. That's why you see kids underneath desks and things. They want like almost like a cave. So I just got a hamper, like one of those long ones for them to sit in. But just having that safe space has been like probably one of the biggest wins, because there's so much, and it teaches them emotional regulation, like, and we do breathing throughout the day. Like I have kids leading and breathing and just teaching them how, because it's so hard for them to calm down sometimes. Even adults have that same problem.
Exactly. Honestly. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And it's an excellent strategy that kids can carry with them for a lifetime. You don't need any special equipment, and when you're starting at such a young age, you see that they will do self-talk and say, okay, I need to calm myself down. I'm going to do my breathing. It's really impressive to see. And it works. It works. The more practice they do it, it works. I love your suggestion about the calm down corner. Are students allowed to access it whenever they need to? Do they request to go, or they're allowed to take it?
They just go. And sometimes I have a timer of, it's a sand timer, and it's 2 minutes. So they flip it, and, there's some kids obviously that are always going to push the limits. So you kind of have to watch them, but they'll flip it. And then I have, fidgets. I have a bookshelf right there, and they are allowed to do. And I've had some kids, like after being in there, they'll come up to me and say, I still need a little more time. And then that's usually when we'll kind of talk about like, do you want to talk about it? Do you need to do something different, like take a walk? And that seems to work really good. They don't usually have to ask me to go. They just kind of go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And how big is that space about, would you say?
It's the width of a hamper.
Okay.
I have it back in my library kind of area, but that hamper does keep them kind of confined. Bigger kids would need a little more space, but like a corner of the room, or like a little, I've seen some teachers in our school have kind of taken like a curtain to make like kind of a canopy, so that they need that little space, like they like to kind of cocoon in.
Right.
So it doesn't take much space at all, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Because what you're saying, it's working for you, and you have a very small amount of space, and the kids are utilizing the strategy. It's effective.
Yeah.
And that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it works really good. And having just a few fidgets that stay there, or a book, or I even have printed off like breathing, like techniques where they can trace their finger around the square or a triangle to breathe. I see, or like pushing the numbers while they breathe. But a lot of kids like to just read a book, so there's a lot of different strategies kids can use. So it really is helpful. So that would be a good
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. This was great, very informative. It's nice to talk to a general education teacher because we don't always get that perspective because we land up being in our own little microcosm of special ed world. So I'm really glad you signed up for this interview because it's super helpful to us to see all different perspectives and how we can support everybody. So
Right.
thank you very much. This was great. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining your therapy source for this Day in the Life series hosted by Margaret Rice. Visit yourtherapysource.com for more information to help students succeed.